Hi, this is Shirley from the James Kennedy Public Library. I'm here to talk to you about a special March activity that the library is hosting. It is our March Book Mania activity. We thought it would be fun to do something a little different to share some of the popular titles from 2020 and also to give you an opportunity to maybe take a look at them if you haven't read them already. So what we did was we printed out a list of the top 16 adult fiction books checked out by James Kennedy Public Library patrons. The only caveat to this was we are only allowing one book per author so that the same author isn't competing against themselves. So these top 16 books have been put into a randomly generated bracket, and now is the time for you to vote on them. So they're in pairs, and for this first week, so there are 16 titles to choose from, and you will be voting, and next week they'll be down to 8, and so on throughout the month. To make this a little bit easier, to remind you of the books if you've already read them, or give you a flavor of them if you might be interested, we have library staff and volunteers that have done really brief book talks or reviews. That's also part of this video, so you can take a look at those and then click on the link to the Google document in the text and then go and vote for your favorite. Every Monday in March, there will be a new voting until the last week when the winner will be announced. If you vote, every time you vote, include your name and email address, and you will be entered into a drawing to win the top 2 vote earners to add to your own personal library. And then also as part of that prize, you would get a Adopt a Book form, which is where you would choose a book that you would like to add to the James Kennedy Public Library collection. If you have any questions, as always, give the library a call or send us an email at librarian.dyersville.lib.ia.us. Thank you.
For this section, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite books, Peace Talks from Jim Butcher. This is book 16 of the Harry Dresden Files, which the main character is a wizard living in modern-day Chicago, who's also a PI who takes on cases involving the paranormal. If you've seen Supernatural, it's kind of a similar setup. Well, for about the last 8 or 9 books, there's been a war going on between a whole bunch of different supernatural factions, and they are deciding to come together for a peace talks. And that's kind of the core of what this book is about. However, at the same time, Harry's brother Thomas finds himself involved in a conspiracy, so Harry's trying to save the day on that, as well as some other people are trying to make moves to undermine the peace talks. The ending of this book is crazy, and it sets up the next one in a very significant way. Highly recommend this book, and hopefully you'll vote for it.
Hi, everybody. Shirley from the James Kennedy Public Library here to talk to you about the book Texas Outlaw by James Patterson and Andrew Borelli. This is a murder mystery / Western, I guess, with just a little bit of romance thrown in. If you like James Patterson, I think this is kind of a typical novel for him. So I would recommend it for those of you who enjoy that bit of mystery suspense, figuring out what's going on. This is actually the second book featuring Rory Yates, who is a Texas Ranger. Rory is involved with a country music singer, and at the very beginning of the book, she writes a song about him, how he's a hero. He saved some people in a bank robbery, and that kind of puts him in the limelight, which his boss doesn't really like, and his boss kind of got a bad reputation or a bad response because of this whole bank robbery issue. So he sends him off to investigate the murder of a councilwoman in a little town in Texas. So that is a very beginning basic premise of the story. I don't want to give it away from you. If you haven't read this, I would recommend it. And if you have read it, I would suggest that you vote for it at our March Book Mania event. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela English, and my Book Mania pick is Janet Ivanovich's Fortune and Glory. This is the 27th book of the Stephanie Plum series. You're going to find all the exciting stuff about Stephanie Plum that we've come to enjoy. There are cars that explode, there's Lulu's outfits, there's all kinds of danger with Stephanie's apprehension agent job. She encounters some interesting characters for her bonds, to pay her bonds. There's Ranger, there's Morelli, everything you've come to expect. This book starts at the end of book 26, where Grandma Mazur's husband has died, and he has left keys to the treasure, his treasure. A lot of his friends want his treasure, so there's There's a lot of action regarding the treasure with some of Grandma Mazur's former husband's associates. You're going to find all the fun stuff that you've come to expect through Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series. I highly recommend it.
Hi, I'm Deb Gunkoff from the James Kennedy Library, talking about our March book, Mania. And the book I chose was This Is How I Lied by Heather Goodenkoff, a local author. She has many books out there. And this one is about Eve, who was found murdered in a cave in the town of Grotto. And her best friend, decades later, is a policeman in the town of Grotto. And the cold case resurfaces and she tries to solve the murder mystery. If you like mysteries and thrillers, this is the type of book that you'd like to check out.
Hi, this is Dawn at the James Kennedy Public Library for March Book Mania, and I'm here to talk about the book Walk the Wire by David Baldalci. So the summary of the book is that Amos Decker and his team are sent to the small fracking community of London, North Dakota to investigate the murder of a woman. Her body was autopsied before being dumped, which isn't the strangest thing. She is a local woman who is a teacher that belongs to a religious colony just outside of town. But she's also a local prostitute. And London is a town full of ruthless business owners, shady government officials, and religious outsiders, all determined to keep their secrets from coming out. Soon other murders occur, and Decker is racing against time to solve the murders before the whole town explodes. So this book is number 6 in the popular Amos Decker Memory Man mystery thriller series. If you are not familiar with the series, Amos Decker is a unique police detective. He's a former NFL football player whose career is ended with a violent helmet-to-helmet collision. But that collision resulted in hyperthymesia and synesthesia, meaning Decker never forgets anything, and he counts in colors and sees time as pictures in his head. 2 things that aid him greatly in his new career as a police detective. Also, if you are a fan of Baldalci and you read some of his other series, you'll be pleasantly surprised by the appearance of some of those characters in this book who show up to help out Decker. So can Decker solve the crimes before more murders occur?
Hello, my name is Kim. I'm here to talk about the book Dance Away With Me by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. The book is checked out, so all I have is a copy of the cover. The main characters are Tess and Ian. Susan Elizabeth Phillips usually writes lighthearted romances with a lot of humor and fun. This is a departure for her. It's a lot more heartbreaking. There's sadness in this book. So if you're a fan of Susan Elizabeth Phillips, this is a different type of book. Tess goes into the Appalachian Mountains and meets a lot of interesting characters. Wonderful characterization, really well written book, but definitely not the usual for Susan Elizabeth Phillips.
Hi, I'm Ann Beckenstead at the James Kennedy Public Library, and I'm going to talk today about New York Times bestseller Debbie Macomber's book, A Walk Along the Beach. It's about 2 sisters who are complete opposites living as roommates. The one owns her own bakery and coffee shop, and the other survived a terrible illness and now has a new lease on life and plans to summit Mount Rainier. The 2 sisters must learn from each other's strengths and find out in the end family is everything. This contemporary romance has 4.11 out of 5 ratings on Goodreads.
Sisters of Choice by Susan Mallory is a story of Sophia, a young girl who's a brilliant entrepreneur with her own internet business. She is very poor at managing people, and she does not know how to delegate jobs to others. After a fire, she moves back to her hometown, and she's reconnecting with her friends from the past and some family members. And there's a bunch of different characters in the book, but the 2 that stand out the most is Audrey, who is a very dysfunctional lady who had a child when she was very young as a single person and has never moved on from that. And then her daughter Heather, who had to grow up very, very quickly and take care of her mother. Also, there's the young, handsome, blue-eyed Tai Chi instructor on the beach working, teaching Tai Chi, a little bit of eye candy for all the ladies. And it's a good read, fun read, easy. I think you would enjoy it.
Hi, this is Dawn at James Kennedy Public Library, and for March Book Mania, I'm here to talk about the book Sweet Vengeance by Fern Michaels. So a summary of the story is that Tessa Jameson is convicted of the murders of her husband and twin daughters. 10 years into her prison sentence, her case is overturned on a technicality, and she's released on bail pending a new trial. To escape the press, Tessa retreats to a small tropical island owned by her late husband's company. There, she, along with some others, decide to figure out who really killed her family. So this book is a departure for Michaels, who is best known as a romance author, while this book is more of a mystery thriller. This book is a standalone read and not related to any of her series. The entire book takes place in 3 days and is a quick read. There are plot twists, surprises, and a little bit of romance. And can you guess who the real killer is before the book ends?
Hi, I'm here to review the book by Nicholas Sparks, The Return. This is his latest book. He hadn't written a book in a couple of years, and this one is the New York bestsellers now. It is about a gentleman who gets injured in Afghanistan, and he inherits a cabin, and he moves back to his grandfather's town, where he starts a new life. It's very interesting, and it's a great read.
Camino Wins by John Grisham is part crime mystery and part thriller. It takes place during the fallout of a hurricane hitting Camino Island, Florida. The reader follows Bruce Cable, a bookstore owner and prominent dealer of rare books. After the hurricane leaves destruction in its wake, one of Bruce's friends is found dead. But his suspicious injuries suggest that the storm was not the cause of death. He was an author of thrillers himself, and the characters in his books strike a fair resemblance to real-world people. Could the key to his apparent murder be contained in the manuscript for his new novel? Since the police are overwhelmed with the aftermath of the storm, the reader follows Bruce and other literary players as they investigate the murder for themselves. Book 2 in John Grisham's New Island series, Camino Wins is enjoyable as a standalone novel. It is a lighter, quicker read than a typical Grisham book, and features amateur sleuths who get a little help from officials to discover who murdered one of their peers and why.
Hi, this is Shirley from the James Kennedy Public Library, and I want to talk to you for just a minute or two about the book A Week at the Shore by Barbara Dielinski. This is one of the top 16 books checked out during 2020, and it is one of the titles I'm going to talk just a little bit about. This is a family story, maybe could be considered women's fiction, but if you like stories about family and friendship and growing up, I think you'll really enjoy this one. I would describe it as a story of family, friendship, forgiveness, and I guess forgetfulness, for lack of a better term. Basically, the premise is there's a woman is living in New York with her 13-year-old daughter, and she gets a call from an old flame and it convinces her she needs to go home. So she takes a week, and she and her daughter go back to her home on the beach, which is the reason it's a week at the shore, and reconnects with some family and friends. There's a lot of history in this fall, a lot of relationships. There's a bit of romance, a lot of mystery. I don't want to give the storyline away, but Mallory, that's the main character's name, hasn't been home basically for 20 years because her parents had divorced. She and her dad didn't necessarily get along that well, but when she goes home, she reconnects with some of these people. And what had happened 20 plus years ago was her dad and the neighbor woman went out on a boat ride, and the neighbor woman disappeared. So her dad, who is a lawyer, was considered possibly involved in it. There was all kinds of relationship issues. There was a rumor that her father and this woman were having an affair, and so her parents divorced. And so, she took her mom's side. There always seemed to be some kind of feeling that maybe she wasn't her dad's biological daughter, and that kind of gets thrown into this line. The neighbor woman's son, Jack, was her old flame that called her, and so that relationship kind of flourishes again, and you get that backstory. So it's really an interesting. I don't want to give it away. I want you to read it because I think you'll enjoy it. There's a connection. If you have siblings, you feel those kind of storylines or those kind of relationships by reading about the three sisters that are involved in this, and her as a mom, and the dad is in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, so they're asking him questions for this, trying to get some of the story from what happened 20 years back, and if there were relationships, and if she really was his daughter or not. So all of that is there. The mom died 10 years ago in a car accident, so they can't get that information from her anymore, and they're hoping to get it from their father and just try and pull all these things together. Anyway, I really enjoyed the book. I think you probably would too. If you like anything like Daniel Steele or Kingsbury or...
Hi, Kim here to talk about Bombshell by Stuart Woods. This is book 4 in the Teddy, I can get this name wrong, Teddy Faye series. If you are interested in this book, please start with book 1. If you jump in with book 4, it can be a little confusing. Teddy is an ex-CIA agent who has many different identities and is living his life now as a Hollywood producer. Murder and mayhem ensue, and he is exhibiting his usual ingenuity and extricating himself from some interesting situations. This book is a very fast read, lots of white space. Not my favorite series. If you really are interested in this type of thing, I strongly recommend Thomas Perry. They're a little bit meatier books. Stuart Woods, Bombshell.
Hello, so for this section, we're going to be talking about Ellen Hildebrand's 28 Summers. This is a romantic love story book. The main character, his mother Mallory, is on her deathbed, and she leaves him instructions to call this particular phone number. And when he does so, the man who picks up, his wife is running for the President of the United States, so this is a very important person. So he's wondering what ties does he have to his mother. Well, it turns out that 28 years ago, for the 28 Summers, the two of them met when Mallory inherited a beach house, and the two of them kind of fell in love, but they lived very separate lives. He was going into politics, she was doing her own things, but every summer they would meet up and basically have a weekend to themselves. And it accumulates through the ways that we impact each other through our lives. So that is 28 Summers from Ellen Hildebrand.
Hi, this is Joe from the James Kennedy Public Library, and I have a surprise for you. Before I tell you about this book, I have to tell you that when I married a million years ago, I was only 89 pounds and had to make my own wedding dress. When I saw this title, I thought, oh, I've got to find out. Daniel Steele wrote a book called The Wedding Dress. We have it in large print and we have it in small print. And what's so interesting about this is I was married back in the 70s. This even starts in the 20s, and maybe some of you might know something about that. But anyway, what's so interesting about this wedding dress is the journey that it's taken. Daniel Steele's epic new novel, the lives of 4 generations of women in one family, span fortune, loss, motherhood, tragedy, and victories. That's pretty much all of us. From the glamorous San Francisco social scene of the 1920s, through war and cultural changes of the 60s, the rise of the Silicon Valley today, this extraordinary novel takes us on a family odyssey that is both heartbreaking and inspiring as each generation faces the challenges of their day. It is large print, fast reading, and very enjoyable. So get yours at the library. Thanks, guys, for listening.
So this book is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owen. It's a coming-of-age novel, mystery, maybe romance, and it deals with some difficult themes as well, like childhood neglect and abandonment, and also some themes of resiliency and survival. So this is set in the 60s in a coastal town of North Carolina. Kaya, our heroine, is left to her own devices at the age of 6 because each family member leaves one after the other to escape the abuse of a father, who also eventually leaves Kaya to her own devices. So here's Kaya, young, alienated from the community and basically shunned by the members of the community, fending for herself, learning how to hunt and find food, cook, and also learn a lot about nature and the surroundings of the swamp where she lives in almost isolation. And those qualities, she uses that understanding of nature in her later relationships and situations that she finds herself in. So in that isolation, she also manages to have 2 love interests throughout her life. One is Tate, a friend for life, basically, who is also kind of her mentor and teacher and guide and love interest. And also Chase, local hero, playboy, well-known family in town, love interest, who is found dead. Did the Marsh girl, as she is known, do it? You'll have to read the book.